Okay, let's talk about cost. To calculate cost, our total costs are going to be composed of two different things. We're going to have some fixed costs, and then we'll have total variable costs. Now, our book abbreviates these as TC, FC, and TVC, which is a little bit confusing, but remember that fixed costs are going to be things that are fairly consistent month after month. Say you sign a lease and you have to pay that lease, every single month you have rent to pay. That would go into the fixed cost side of things that don't really change month after month. However, variable costs, these are things that could go up or down depending on if you're open more hours, you may have extra electricity if you're running a business, or additional water, or additional material costs if you're producing some sort of item. That sort of thing would go under the total variable costs. You expand your business and the total amount of products that you're going to have to create is going to expand as well. However, fixed costs are going to stay relatively the same month after month after month in contributing to the total cost. Now, average cost is a little bit different. Now, average, we all pretty much know how to take average, right? That we're going to add up, say we had 3 exams, we could add up all 3 exams and then divide by the total number of exams. It's really the same idea with average costs. You add up your total costs and you divide by the total number of items that you're producing. So marginal cost is an additional thing here. Marginal cost technically means the cost for producing the next item. So as it's written out here, this is technically true. The marginal cost for Q items is going to be the total cost for Q plus 1 items minus the total cost for Q number of items. So what we're doing here, let's say we're looking for the marginal cost of 100 items. What we would do is calculate what would the total cost be for the 101st item minus the total cost for the first 100 items. All right, so 101 items minus 100 items, subtract those costs and you get the marginal cost. But for all of our applications in this class, business calculus class, what we want to do is we want to think of marginal cost and marginal. Whenever you hear that keyword, you're going to be thinking that's the exact same thing as derivative. All right, so marginal cost is going to be the derivative of total cost. Marginal always means derivative for our class. And that's basically true in business classes as well. All right, so jumping into some examples here, we're going to do some calculations as we go through here. This table on the right-hand side represents the total cost for producing Q items. So if we want to figure out what's the total fixed costs, or FC in this case, well, our fixed costs would be the same thing as producing 0 items. We should be looking at that first entry into the table over there. That it's still going to cost us, whether we produce 0 items or 100 items, you automatically have to pay $20,000 in this model. So we could answer that with $20,000. Okay, next up on part B, when 200 items are made, what is the total variable cost? Okay, so let's answer that first and then talk about the average variable cost. So the total variable cost for 200 items, and we should be referring to 200 items right here. Well, the total cost for 200 items would be $45,000, but that's comprised of 2 different pieces, right? Our fixed costs, which we answered in part A, was $20,000, plus our total variable costs. Well, we're looking for our total variable costs. So if we plug into this equation, we can do a little bit of solving down by subtracting 20,000 from both sides. So that'll leave the total variable costs over on the right-hand side, and those will be $25,000 to answer that total variable cost question. Now, what about that average variable cost? The average variable cost can be computed. Let's look up above here. The average variable cost would be the total variable cost divided by the number of items. All right, very similar to the same formula we had for average cost, only we're throwing in average variable costs in this case. So total variable cost divided by the number of items. We can say average variable costs So total variable cost divided by the number of items. We said total variable costs were $25,000. Number of items, well, we were producing 200 items, our quantity Q there. So this is going to be $125 per item. All right, and then on part C, thinking about the marginal cost here. When 200 items are made, estimate the marginal cost. Now this is a little bit more difficult because we don't have an actual function we could take its derivative of. Instead, what we want to do is we're focused on this 245,000. What I would suggest we're going to do is we can think of this as meaning the slope of the tangent line to the graph. All right, we don't really have a graph, but we can find the slope of secant lines first. So secant lines, we're going to find their slopes. All right, so first off, I'm going to use these two ordered pairs, basically treating these as 100, 35,000, and 200, 45,000. All right, so the slope of that secant line, let's go, the slope is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, so that works out to be 10,000 divided by 100, or $100, and that's going to be a cost per item for the marginal cost. But maybe that's not the best estimation we can get. Instead, let's choose the point that we really care about, that producing 200 items, but let's use the next closest value over here with 300. All right, again, treating these as ordered pairs, filling into our slope formula to find the slope of these secant lines. This slope is going to be 53,000 minus 45,000 over 300 minus 200. So in our case, that's going to be 8,000 divided by 100, or $80 per item. Now, neither one of these is exactly correct, all right? Somehow the slope of the tangent line, which would be this marginal cost, remember marginal is going to mean the derivative, and derivative means the slope of the tangent line, would be somewhere in between these two. So to get an even better approximation here, we can get an approximation for our marginal cost. Let's go ahead and take the average of these. So the marginal cost is going to be somewhere in between, let's say 100 plus 80 divided by 2, which will be 180 divided by 2, which will be approximately, and I know it works out exactly on our computations, but $90 per item. It's going to be right around there for our marginal cost in this example. So I hope this helps out as you're trying to read a table, put all this stuff together. Hope it makes sense.